I remembered the taste of iron before I remembered the pain. The floor rushed up, my cheek split open against the tile. Something in my shoulder tore with a sound like wet paper, and then there was only ringing. He stood over me, breathing hard, knuckles pink and slick. I tried to say my sister's name, my mouth filled with blood instead. She didn't scream, she didn't run. She looked down at me like I was a broken plate and said, calm as a receipt, "You should have signed the mortgage." That sentence landed harder than his fist. I crawled out of their house on my knees, one arm useless, vision tilting. I made it to my parents' door by memory alone, counting cracks in the sidewalk, counting breaths. I knocked with my forehead. When it opened, I fell forward and everything went black. We didn't start like this. When my sister married him, I shook his hand and meant it. He was charming in a practiced way, a man who talked about plans instead of people. I believed the confidence was competence. I believed the smiles were clean. We spent holidays together. He poured wine. He asked questions. He learned where my savings were, what my job paid, how my credit score hovered like a halo over my head. I told myself he was just being friendly. Family does that, right? When they bought the house, he called it a step forward. When the bank hesitated, he called me a bridge. Just a signature, he said, temporary, safe. He said it with my sister's eyes on me, soft and pleading. He said it like he already owned my yes. I said no. That's when the air changed. It started small. Missed calls that piled up like snow, jokes with teeth, a text sent to the family group chat. Some people don't understand loyalty. I watched the blame migrate toward me. I watched my sister stop meeting my eyes. Then the pressure escalated. He dropped numbers into conversation like threats wrapped in math. Interest rates, penalties, how one signature could save them, how my refusal was hurting them. The night he hit me, he'd poured whiskey like punctuation. He stood too close. He said my name like it was a dare. When I turned to leave, he blocked the door. I remember thinking absurdly that I should take my shoes off so I wouldn't scuff the floor when I fell. I woke up in a hospital with my arm in a sling and my mother's face folded in half by fear. The doctor spoke carefully. Assault, dislocation, lacerations. The police came. They asked me to tell it again, slower. I didn't cry. I watched the officer's pen hesitate when I repeated my sister's words. I watched the disgust crawl across his face when I described the money. Even he flinched. They took photos, they took statements, they left. And that's when my planning began. I've always been good at waiting. While my shoulder healed, I let them talk. I saved every message, every voicemail where his voice sharpened, every text where my sister defended him with borrowed language. I filed for a protective order and didn't tell anyone until it was granted. I asked questions at the bank quietly. I learned about guarantors and timelines. I learned how often he'd refinanced, how close they were to default. I learned which lies he told the lender and which documents didn't quite line up. I spoke to a lawyer and used words like documentation and pattern. I didn't use the word revenge. I didn't have to. I sent one email to my sister, just one. I told her I loved her. I hoped she was safe. I attached nothing. I waited. The plan was simple because truth usually is. First, the protective order did its work. He couldn't come near me. That made him sloppy. Angry people bleed evidence. Then the bank got an anonymous packet. Not accusations, facts, dates, copies. A timeline that told a story even a spreadsheet could understand. Then the police followed up. Assault cases don't like silence. They like patterns. They like witnesses. They like when the victim doesn't recant. Social consequences followed legal ones the way thunder follows lightning. Friends stopped calling him.
My sister started calling me. I didn't answer. The confrontation came months later in a courtroom hallway that smelled of old coffee and panic. He looked smaller, thinner. His suit didn't fit like it used to. My sister stood behind him, eyes rimmed red, hands shaking. He tried to speak to me. The bailiff stepped between us. The protective order hummed like a live wire. Inside, the judge listened. The evidence stacked itself. The photos, the messages, the medical report, the bank's sudden interest in their paperwork. When it was over, he didn't look at me. My sister did. For the first time, she saw me, not as a resource, not as a signature, but as a person who had been broken and stood back up. Anyway, I went home alone that day. I sat on my bed and took the sling off, slow and careful. My shoulder ached. It would always ache a little. Some injuries don't leave, they teach. I thought about the moment on the tile, the taste of iron, the sentence that cut deeper than bone. I thought about how close I came to saying yes, to signing away my future for the comfort of being liked. Justice didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like quiet. It felt like breathing without flinching. They lost the house. He lost his job. The charges stuck. My sister moved out and started saying words that belonged to her again. None of that was my doing, not really. I just told the truth and refused to carry their lies. People ask me if I'm angry. I tell them no. Anger burns hot and fast. I chose something colder, something patient, something that waited until the world could see exactly who he was. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lift a hand. I signed nothing. And when the door finally closed behind them, I stood in the quiet and realized the most satisfying revenge of all isn't destruction, it's survival.